Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, at times seemed to make some statements that she was sympathetic to eugenics ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was more than sympathetic. She had people who were eugenists on her board. She allied herself with eugenists. Now, again, she was more for positive eugenics, not negative eugenics. She believed that people should have sort of choices to make, and she didn't want the government necessarily imposing those, which is where the people that have defended her have said, like, oh, well, she wasn't a eugenist because she was opposed to forced sterilizations. Yes, but that's not what defined eugenics. That's where they're playing on some things. So, but she was. I mean, here's the thing: her worldview was very much. You could put her. I think she bought into the Marxist philosophy. Now, more work might need to be done on this. In her book *Pivot of Civilization*, Sanger wrote this: altruism, humanitarianism, and philanthropy have aided and abetted machinery in the destruction of responsibility and self-reliance among the least desirable elements of the proletariat. So what she's saying is that Christian moral virtues have been the most destructive thing in keeping people alive who otherwise would have died off. We're giving aid to these poor people when what we should be doing is giving them birth control so they stop having babies and being a drain on the society. Now you start to hear the Planned Parenthood terminology come here. Oh, well, these people, I'm just getting abortion because I don't want to have a kid will be a hindrance to society. People have been led to believe that that's for their benefit, but what they're doing is it's a shared practice of eugenics. Right? They just agree to the eugenic practice, but it doesn't make it any less reprehensible if you believe in Imago Dei, if you believe in this idea that we're all made in the image of God, the B'Tselem Elohim.
So now, it's kind of the choice element of, well, I'm choosing, I don't want the child to be born into poverty, and yes. So I'm choosing the abortion. This is all connected to this type of, what do you call it, negative eugenics?
Yeah, the positive versus negative. Yeah. But here's an analogy.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, is it even real choice at this point, or is it more brainwashing? Like, you've been set up to believe this rhetoric for years upon years upon years, and now it's just a subconscious running in your mind and in culture. I don't know that it is really a choice. I just feel like it's what the setup is.
This is where CRT is right in making an observation about how powerful narratives are in being able to blind people to the truth of what's happening. They're right about that, but they're wrong about many things that they're pointing out that fit that narrative. And this is a great example, and it's exactly what you point out, is that, just because, okay, so if I convince a young person that, I'm bullying some girl. Let's use the terminology today. So there's a group of girls and they bully a young girl. Oh, you're fat, you're ugly, you don't deserve to live. And they convince her she needs to take her life and kill herself. Does that make their bullying any less evil or wicked because they didn't pull the trigger? So they didn't take her out to the woods and shoot her themselves, but they convinced her by, this has happened, with young girls, especially being convinced that their life is so unworthy that they take their own life. We would say that's wrong, even though she took her own life. But we're doing the same thing with the unborn. We're saying that life doesn't have a chance. That life isn't going to be worthy of life. That's actually a phrase Hitler used, life unworthy of life. And we've convinced them and brainwashed people, like you said, into thinking and buying into that narrative that it's compassion to end life for some reason. So this is very disconcerting on how we use this. Let me give you one real quick quote because I think it helps. In 1921, okay, so Sanger wrote a Birth Control Review, which is this magazine. She said the campaign for birth control is not merely of eugenic value. So she acknowledged this birth control, which is her bread and butter, that has a eugenic value, but is practically identical in bed with the final aims of eugenics. So it's not only just shares the eugenic values, but the end goal, the goal is the same. That's why she even wrote that the Japanese problem on the West Coast, too many Japanese people, birth control is a great solution, she said. It'll get rid of the feeble-minded, all these immigrants, but it'll get rid of the Japanese that we don't want so much.
So it was her issue, because there's a very famous quote with Sanger that she's wants to find, Black preachers and a Black doctor to help bring her message and convince Black people to engage in abortions or in, population selection, if you will. I guess I'm wondering, in your research, have you seen anything like, was she genuinely racist against Black people, or was it more about them being poor and she was just kind of against all poor people?
So she wasn't racist against Blacks, like, oh, whites are better than Blacks. She was equally discriminatory against many races of many kinds of people, all the mentally ill, the poor people, people who are thieves or made their living breaking the law. She was opposed to all of those people reproducing. So she would align herself with the KKK because it was convenient to her ends. So I would say that in my estimation, she was a racist, but she was more than a racist. She was anti-human.